Across YouTube, there are countless ranking videos on Battlefront 2, ranking countless different aspects of the game, such as heroes, reinforcements, blasters, maps, and more. One thing I've noticed, however, is that nobody's ranked hero abilities. Not until today, at least. This could be due to the fact that there are 67 hero abilities in total, or for other reasons. However, despite that, today I'll be ranking all the hero abilities from worst to best, based on my personal opinion. One thing I quickly want to mention just before we start is that I'll be ranking the abilities based on how well they function across all game modes. So even if an ability works well or doesn't work well in one game mode, its ranking can still be affected by its performance in other game modes. With that said, this video will take quite a while, so let's get straight into it. In last place, at number 67, is BB9E's Charge Up. I hate to diss my boy BB9E like this, but unfortunately his Charge Up just isn't that great. BB9E's Charge Up prevents himself and nearby blaster characters from having their weapons overheat. It also allows nearby blaster heroes' abilities to recharge faster. However, this doesn't work for BB9E, meaning that the only benefits BB9E gets for this ability is that his stun doesn't overheat for the 5 seconds this ability is active for. This ability really just doesn't do much and can't compare to the other abilities in the game. In 66th place is Iden's Pulse Cannon. Now hear me out. While this ability can certainly be useful in certain situations, Iden Versio can already shoot very far with her default fire and secondary fire, which also deals significant damage, and in a larger radius, mitigating the need for Iden's Pulse Cannon. Iden's Pulse Cannon also takes several seconds to charge up before it can kill anyone, further reducing its usefulness. When you're zoomed in with Iden's Pulse Cannon, you can't see anything around you, including your own health bar, so you won't even know if you're being attacked or how low on health you are, until you're dead. At number 65 is Lando's Smoke Grenade. While this ability can certainly be useful for making quick escapes and preventing enemies from shooting him or hitting him with their lightsabers, this ability is ranked so low because it hinders your allies just as much as your enemies. While Lando is able to see through his smoke grenade with his thermal vision, his allies can't, meaning that this ability isn't very helpful in team game modes. Also, Lando's smoke grenade only really works if he's in a small narrow area. Otherwise, enemies can easily just go around the smoke grenade and get to him. At number 64 is BB-8's Resistance Backing. Now this ability certainly can be useful, as it hides allies within 20 meters of BB-8 from enemy scanners and reveals enemies in that same area. This ability also allows revealed enemies to take 5% more damage, which is just nothing and won't even save a second in how quickly you kill enemies. This ability, while certainly having some perks, just doesn't hold up when compared to the other hero abilities. At number 63 is Palpatine's Dark Aura. Now this might be a controversial choice to some, but just hear me out. Palpatine's Dark Aura works by dealing damage to enemies within 10 meters of Palpatine. At default, this ability deals 15 damage per second and lasts 8 seconds, meaning that even if Palpatine just stood still near an enemy for the full duration this ability lasts, the enemy would only take 120 damage, which isn't even enough to kill an assault officer or specialist, which have 150 health, the lowest out of any character in the game. This ability can also be avoided by just walking away from Palpatine and staying out of range of the ability, which, aside from the AI, any sensible human player would do, making the ability pretty useless in player-dominated game modes. This ability is also completely useless, as you'll get much more kills just from using your lightning and chain lightning, rather than this ability. Dark Aura encourages Palpatine to get close and personal with enemies, and stay relatively still, both things that you shouldn't be doing as Palpatine, and will likely get you killed. This ability also takes 25 seconds to recharge, which is longer than average compared to other hero abilities. Also, in order to activate this ability, Palpatine must stand still, most likely close to enemies, so he can use the ability, while the ability takes a second to activate, leaving Palpatine completely open and vulnerable while this ability activates. Overall, this ability just doesn't work well with Palpatine's playstyle and is utterly useless. In my opinion, this ability does more harm than good to Palpatine, and absolutely sucks. At number 62 is Grievous's Unrelenting Advance. This ability is good for blocking attacks from in front of General Grievous, especially if he runs out of stamina, as well as if you're stuck in a corner and getting spammed by an enemy Saber hero in HVV or Hero Showdown. Besides this, however, Grievous's Unrelenting Advance isn't very useful. Grievous moves very slowly when using this ability, meaning that if you want to use it to attack enemies, they can simply just run away and avoid it. Unrelenting Advance also leaves Grievous's back completely exposed to attacks, which is the worst part to be left vulnerable, as characters in Battlefront 2 take more damage when hit in the back. Overall, Grievous's Unrelenting Advance just pales in comparison to even his own other abilities, and especially other hero abilities. At number 61 is Rey's Mind Trick. This ability is decent for momentarily making it a bit more difficult for players to move. However, any decent player should be able to deal with it, or even just defend against Rey until the ability wears off. That's also not to mention that this ability doesn't work on AI, making it completely useless in co-op and single player modes. At number 60 is Finn's Undercover Team. While this ability removes Finn and nearby allies from enemy minimaps, increases the sprint speed of him and his allies, and reveals nearby enemies, the main function of this ability is that Finn swaps out his weapon with a different blaster, the Gly 44, which has a smaller crosshair, damage per shot, and runs out faster than Finn's default blaster. When considering the fact that Finn already has a pretty good default blaster, as well as an ability that allows him to lock on to any nearby enemies and aimbot them, as well as an ability that also allows Finn to fire repeatedly without losing blaster heat, Undercover Team just isn't needed for its main purpose, and its side effects aren't enough to put it any higher. At number 59 is Leia's Squad Shield. Now don't get me wrong, this ability has definitely saved me on several occasions, and is certainly useful for surviving massive hordes of enemies, or keeping yourself and allies safe while you capture or complete objectives. With that said, this shield can also be a giant pain in the ass when you're trying to kill enemies behind or on the other side of the shield, and will force you to have to take on the enemies face to face, which can lead to dangerous situations. This shield can also be used by the enemies to protect them if they manage to take control of it, making it counterintuitive. This shield does also regen health, however it only does so at 5 health per second, a very slow rate. Nobody has the time or the patience to be standing in the shield for that long to regen when they could be getting kills. At number 58 is Luke's Rush. This ability is decent, but there's nothing that special about it. At number 57 is Darth Maul's Spin Attack. This ability is also decent, but slightly faster than Luke's Rush. At number 56 is Yoda's Dash. This ability is also decent, but can hit enemy sabers through their block, and is less buggy than Maul's Spin Attack. At number 55 is Han's Sharpshooter. This ability allows Han to shoot slightly faster than usual. However, with this ability, each shot deals less damage, and you can only fire 11 shots max without star cards, and 15 max with the Sharpshooter's Calm star card equipped. This ability is decent, but there are definitely better abilities in the game. At number 54 is Lando's Disabler. Several other heroes in the game have abilities that are able to stun enemies. However, Lando's stun ability differs from all the others, as his Disabler takes 2 steps to activate, giving the enemies time to react before they can be stunned. This, coupled with the only 1.1 seconds that the stun lasts for, makes it unlikely for Lando to get many kills or deal much damage with his Disabler. In addition, this ability isn't friendly to new players, as they may not realise that it takes 2 steps to activate, and therefore not use it properly. At number 53 is Darth Maul's Chokehold. This ability is good for crowd control and ledging enemy heroes if you want to be annoying in HVV or Hero Showdown. Despite this, Chokehold has several major flaws. At default, this ability only deals 77 damage, meaning that it isn't even enough damage to kill infantry. This ability also throws enemies away from Maul, making it harder for him to kill them, and forcing him to have to chase after them and close the distance in order to kill them. While using this ability, Darth Maul is also completely vulnerable and open to taking damage from enemies not getting choked. There's also a bug in which enemies that get choked don't even get thrown away and are still able to shoot Maul while he's choking them, which often will get Maul killed or put him on critical health. I would argue that this is the weakest crowd control ability in the game. At number 52 is Boba's Concussion Rocket. This ability certainly has its perks, and is definitely useful for hindering enemies and preventing them from shooting Boba for a brief period of time. However, as I stated in a previous video, how to play as Boba Fett, this ability doesn't concuss AI, and only disables their blasters for 1.2 seconds, mitigating its usefulness in co-op and single player modes. Although this ability is a good addition to Boba and works well with his playstyle, when compared to other hero abilities, it's just decent. At number 51 is Palpatine's Electrocute. Similar to Dark Aura, I would argue that Palpatine's Electrocute doesn't fit with his playstyle and does more harm than good. In order to activate it, Palpatine must be on the ground where he's most vulnerable and has to get up close and personal with his enemies, which will oftentimes cause Palpatine to take significant damage. The ability also takes a second to activate, time in which Palpatine is completely vulnerable. Additionally, this ability is also significantly weaker than other stun abilities, having only an area of effect of 15 meters and a stun duration of 1 second, meaning Palpatine only has a second to kill his enemies or get away after using this ability. At number 50 is Obi-Wan's All-Out Push. Now don't get me wrong, this ability is absolutely amazing at clearing out enemy troopers. However, the time it takes to charge up is what limits this ability. With the time it takes to charge this ability up enough to kill enemy troopers, typically by that time enemy players will likely have noticed and gotten out of the way. If you instead choose to just do a quick surprise push, however, the enemies will survive and just end up further away from you, making it more difficult for you to kill them. This ability is also very easy to avoid in hero game modes, unless you catch a player off guard or are fighting a less experienced player. In co-op and single player modes against AI, All-Out Push is much more useful and will usually get quite a few kills. However, since I'm accounting for all game modes, this ability just falls shy of passing the 50 number mark. At number 49 is Anakin's Passionate Strike, which some people may disagree with, but hear me out. This ability is useful for hitting enemy Saber heroes through their block and getting critical hits on enemy reinforcements and heavies. Anakin doesn't need this ability, however, as he already has 3 great crowd control abilities that can already wipe out whole squads. When compared to Passionate Strike, which can only hit 1 enemy and maybe 2 if you're lucky, this ability really just doesn't add much to Anakin's playstyle and falls short when compared to the remaining hero abilities. At number 48 is Captain Phasma's Staff Strikes. This ability is good for quickly taking out infantry and can be a good counter to enemy heroes. However, in order to use this ability, Phasma has to get up close and personal with enemies, which can quickly go wrong for her. If using this ability from further away from the enemy, it will also take longer for you to use it, as Phasma does a goofy animation to get close to the enemy and hit them, time in which she's vulnerable and open to taking damage. This ability also functions as Phasma's melee, meaning that it could have been made to just be her melee and been replaced with a different ability. I suppose that would be a rather overpowered melee, but it's not like there aren't other heroes in the game with overpowered melees. At number 47 is BB90's Smoke Screen. This ability is similar to Lando's Smoke Grenade, however it's better in 3 ways. First, it allows all your allies to see where the enemies are through the smoke and doesn't hinder your allies. Second, it emits smoke in a 360-degree radius around BB90, meaning that enemies can't see BB90 no matter where they are. Thirdly, it constantly emits smoke wherever BB90 goes, meaning that even when he's moving and changing position, the smoke still follows him and the enemies still can't see him. Overall, this ability is pretty useful, however there are still better abilities. At number 46 is Iden's Droid Shield. This is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's extremely useful for getting out of tough situations and surviving situations where you're close to death. On the other hand, however, it's completely useless against Sabers, BB-8's attack, and multiple abilities, making it useless against more than half the enemies in hero game modes. While I wanted to put this ability higher, I just couldn't justify putting it any higher than it already is with its flaws. At number 45 is Iden's Droid Stun, 2 back-to-back Iden abilities. While Iden's Droid Stun is more useful in trooper modes than hero modes, the opposite applies to her Droid Stun, which is more useful in hero modes than trooper modes. In hero modes, Iden's Droid Stun can be used to absolutely melt enemy heroes' health and is a powerful counter to enemy heroes. In trooper game modes, however, Iden's Droid Stun is less useful, as she already has a secondary fire which can absolutely melt enemy troopers' health without having to stun them. Her stun could be useful for stunning enemies and escaping when she gets low on health, but she already has her shield to use for that, and she can't use her shield while her droid is stunning enemies. While there will be occasional situations in which you use Iden's Droid Stun in trooper modes, overall it just doesn't need to be used that often and can't be justified in being put any higher. At number 44 is Boba's Rocket Barrage. If used correctly and on tight choke points, this ability can annihilate enemies and is a good crowd control ability. However, due to the small radius of the blasts of the rockets, you have to be very accurate with your shots, and all the enemies have to be very close together in order for this ability to be used effectively. The majority of the time, this ability will only score you 1 to 2 kills, maybe even 3 to 4 if you use it on a large group of enemies that are bundled together. However, the number of times that you will get 5 or more kills with this ability is extremely rare. At number 43 is Dooku's Lightning Stun. Now this ability is decent, however it can only hit 5 enemies max and deals 10 less damage for each target it hits, restricting its effectiveness in trooper modes. Dooku's Lightning Stun can certainly be used to briefly knock down enemies and kill them, however it shouldn't be used primarily as a crowd control ability. If Dooku runs into large crowds of enemies, he'll quickly get smoked. This ability is powerful in hero combat, but decent at best and counterintuitive at worst in trooper modes, hence putting it at 43. At number 42 is Captain Phasma's Survivor. The extra 200 health this ability grants to Phasma can be the difference between life and death on many occasions. This ability only grants additional health and only to herself, however, whereas all other hero abilities that grant extra health also come with additional perks and affect allies around them as well, such as in Yoda and Finn's case. This makes Survivor comparatively weaker than other health regen abilities and justifies its position in 42nd place. At number 41 is Obi-Wan's Restrictive Mind Trick. In hero combat, this ability is an absolute game changer and can be the difference between whether you win or lose. However, in co-op and against AI, this ability is completely useless and has no effect on the AI. Despite the power of this ability, this massive flaw and complete uselessness in several game modes prevents it from being ranked any higher. At number 40 is Anakin's Retribution. Now this ability is incredibly powerful and can be used to decimate squads of enemies. However, what holds this ability back is the time it takes to charge up. This ability takes a long time to charge up completely, meaning that if you survive a full trooper game as Anakin, you'll likely only get to use this ability once, or even twice if you're lucky. In HVV, it's extremely rare that you'll survive long enough to ever be able to use this ability, and even if you do, it's very rare that you'll be able to get more than 2 enemies in your Retribution. In Hero Showdown, it's virtually impossible for Anakin's Retribution to fully charge. Anakin's Retribution also only charges by him and nearby allies taking damage, and in order for it to fully charge, Anakin and his nearby allies must take 2,500 damage in total, which encourages you to take damage, and is a questionable way of charging the ability. If Anakin's Retribution was like a default ability and just recharged like other abilities, it would definitely be in the top 10. At number 39 is Chewbacca's Shock Grenade. If you use this ability combined with Chewie's Furious Bowcaster, you can annihilate enemies, especially in hero modes. If using it with Chewie's default fire, however, this ability is subpar. The shock duration of the shock grenade only lasts for 0.75 seconds. Chewie's Bowcaster only fires 1 shot a second, meaning that the shock duration will barely last long enough for you to get a single shot in. The only reason this ability is ranked as highly as it is because of the destructive potential it has when combined with Furious Bowcaster. At number 38 is Darth Maul's Furious Throw. This ability is great for killing enemies from a distance and killing multiple enemies that are in a straight line, as well as catching enemy Saber heroes off guard and briefly disabling their block in hero combat. This ability also combines well with Maul's aggressive playstyle. There aren't any real flaws to this ability, aside from the bug where you throw your lightsaber and it becomes invisible. However, the remaining abilities are just better. At number 37 is Darth Vader's Saber Throw. The reason this ability is higher than Maul's Furious Throw is that it deals 130 damage for each hit, while Maul's Furious Throw only deals 85 damage for each hit. At number 36 is Anakin's Heroic Might. Now this ability would be significantly higher if it wasn't ruined by bugs. In co-op, without bugs interfering, this ability can destroy groups of enemies and is a powerful crowd control ability. Against human players, it's easier for enemies to avoid, as they'll see you charging it up and most likely run away, but you'll typically still get a few kills from unsuspecting players. The ability can also be used as a good combo with Anakin's Pull Dominance and Passionate Strike in hero combat. However, due to the bugs in which Anakin gets stuck in his Heroic Might, or gets his Heroic Might cancelled and is unable to move or use any abilities, both of which result in Anakin often dying, Heroic Might had to be put at number 36. At number 35 is Han Solo's Shoulder Charge. This ability is good for making quick getaways, countering aggressive enemy heroes, and taking out annoying enemy troopers and reinforcements. However, the fact that Han can only take out 1 enemy with this ability, or even 2 if they're right next to each other, makes it less useful than the remaining abilities. Also, Han is left exposed and vulnerable while he's charging, and a single choke, freeze, or any other ability that stops Han's shoulder rush could very easily spell death for him. At number 34 is BB-8's Rolling Charge. This is exactly the same as Han's Shoulder Charge, and even deals the same amount of damage, and has the same cooldown time as Han's Shoulder Charge. The only reason Rolling Charge is higher is because BB-8 has a star card, Head First, to increase the damage he deals with this ability, and because he's smaller and therefore less vulnerable when using this ability. At number 33 is Rey's Dash Strike. This can be incredibly useful as a crowd control ability if you have the Damaging Strike star card equipped, which allows Rey to one-shot regular infantry besides heavies with this ability. This ability can also be very good at knocking down enemy heroes in hero combat and landing a few hits on them. Without the damaging strike star card, however, this ability is much less useful in trooper modes and won't get you any kills unless you circle around to hit the enemies a second time. Similarly to Han's shoulder charge, Ray's dash strike also leaves her incredibly exposed and vulnerable to getting shot, or having her dash strike cancelled by an enemy hero's ability. At number 32 is Captain Phasma's Sentry Droid. Phasma's droid can be excellent at controlling command posts and objectives, and giving enemies a tough time. It's also arguably the only ability that's able to make enemy teams rage quit in HVV and win you the game without you even having to do anything. Please don't be that person though. Besides that, however, this ability is incredibly situational, and if Phasma's droid is left alone, it can be destroyed pretty easily. Phasma's droid isn't an ability that can be used anywhere. It can only be used at certain points, and often you'll be encouraged to stay near the droid, which can get pretty boring. At number 31 is Kylo Ren's Freeze. This ability is good for holding enemies in place while you attack them. However, once you manage to get a hit on the enemy, the freeze effect on that enemy is cancelled, no matter how long it still has to go. This ability is good when combined with Pull and Frenzy, however you have to make sure to use it strategically. At number 30 is Kylo's Force Pull. Two back-to-back Kylo abilities. Kylo's Pull is great for getting a bunch of enemies together for you to use your Frenzy on, and is a great way for you to get kills. At default, Kylo's Force Pull only deals 10 damage, which I believe is the lowest amount of damage dealt by any ability that can deal damage in the game. However, the main function of Force Pull isn't to kill enemies with it, but to get enemies close to you for you to frenzy. Kylo's Force Pull damage can also be increased to 60 with the Harsh Pull star card. When used in combination with his Freeze and Frenzy, Kylo's Pull is a great part of his playstyle and can be deadly if used correctly. Speaking of Kylo's Force Pull, at number 29 is Anakin's Pull Dominance. Anakin's Pull Dominance is significantly better than Kylo's Pull, as it deals 120 damage to non-heroes and 80 to heroes without star cards. When used in combination with Heroic Might, Passionate Strike, and Anakin's regular lightsaber hits, Anakin can unleash a devastating combo on enemy teams and heroes. At number 28 is Count Dooku's Exposed Weakness. In hero combat, this ability is absolutely devastating and can be used to crush enemies. This ability is the perfect addition to Dooku's playstyle as a master of hero combat. In trooper modes, however, this ability is far less useful as most of the enemies can be killed very easily, and it isn't worth it to use this ability on infantry. The only times you would have to use this ability in trooper modes is on reinforcements, which can still be killed quite easily without exposed weakness, and enemy heroes, which is quite rare to encounter in trooper modes. If this ranking was just based on hero combat, exposed weakness would most likely be in the top 3, however due to taking trooper modes into consideration as well, this ability doesn't rank as high. At number 27 is Grievous's Thrust Surge. This ability is excellent at quickly closing distance between Grievous and his enemies, as well as taking enemy heroes by surprise, making it great in both hero and trooper modes. The one thing that sets this ability back, however, is the fact that it can only kill 1 to 2 enemies per usage. At number 26 is Yoda's Presence. This is an amazing team ability, as it not only gives Yoda and nearby hero allies 150 extra health at default, but it also grants nearby trooper allies 70 extra health at default. In addition, this ability can also be used to break Yoda and nearby allies out of any stun or choke ability. Although this ability is incredibly useful and doesn't have any major downsides, it just doesn't compare to the remaining 25 abilities. At number 25 is Ray's Insight. I can already hear the riots outside, but just let me explain. Ray's Insight is incredibly powerful, letting her and her allies see enemies through walls and from a pretty far distance away, hiding Ray from enemy minimaps, giving her lightsaber attacks 10 extra damage, and slowing her stamina drain by 50%. This ability is very useful and can be very handy in sneaking up on unsuspecting enemies. However, on open maps, it's much less useful, as you'll typically be able to see enemies much easier without the use of Insight, and being hidden on the minimap won't make much of a difference, as enemies will still be able to spot you fairly easily. Being hidden on the minimap also makes no difference in co-op or single player modes, as the AI don't have minimaps. While the benefits of this ability are certainly very handy, I just don't think that this ability is better than any of the abilities that are still left. At number 24 is Bossk's Proximity Mines. Bossk's Proximity Mines are very handy in trooper modes and will frequently get you kills from clumsy and unsuspecting enemies. Bossk's Proximity Mines are also very good at protecting command posts and objectives, as well as controlling tight hallways and choke points. Bossk's Proximity Mines are very good at catching out unsuspecting heroes in hero combat modes and significantly reducing their health. Despite this, Bossk's Proximity Mines do take a few seconds to arm without the trap arming speed star card equipped, and won't usually be able to save you in a pinch, thus putting it at number 24. At number 23 is another Bossk ability, his Dioxis Grenade. Bossk's Dioxis Grenade is similar to his Proximity Mines in the way that it's also very good at controlling objectives, command posts, choke points and hallways. Bossk's Dioxis Grenade is slightly better than his Proximity Mines, however, as it's able to be placed virtually instantaneously, making it easy to use in a pinch, as well as the fact that it can kill multiple enemies pretty quickly. This ability, however, is fairly easy to avoid by enemies, as all they have to do is run side of a gas area. Still, it's surprising just how many kills you can get with this ability. At number 22 is Boba's For the Hunt. This ability is a vital part of Boba's playstyle, allowing him to fly without using any jetpack fuel for 8 seconds, as well as see any nearby enemies through walls. The extra few seconds of rocket fuel given to Boba during this ability is a really vital part of his character, and the ability to see enemies through the walls also really helps, making this a great ability. However, it just isn't better than any of the remaining abilities. At number 21 is Yoda's Unleash. When charged up, this ability is devastating, allowing Yoda to mop the floor with his enemies and destroy entire teams. Although it's more difficult to charge up this ability in hero modes, it's still very handy for getting aggressive heroes away from Yoda and giving him a few seconds to recover. At number 20 is BB-9E's Shock Spin. This is an amazing crowd control ability, and the amount of kills you can get with it if used correctly in trooper modes is insane. This ability does push enemies away from BB-9E, however if you use it correctly and push all the enemies in the same direction before following them, you can lump up kills fairly easily. This ability is also a great way of getting aggressive heroes off you in hero modes, as well as briefly disabling enemy heroes' blasters. If you however stay in this ability for too long, you will be left vulnerable and can easily be killed, so this ability does require strategy and caution, thus putting it at number 20. At number 19 is Leia's E11. Leia's E11 is an incredibly powerful weapon that can destroy enemies' health. In trooper game modes, Leia dominates with her E11 and can take out multiple enemies before the ability runs out. In hero modes, Leia can shred enemy heroes' stamina and health with her E11 and send them running the other way. The only counter to Leia's E11 is a Saber hero with good stamina that holds block and deflects all the bullets back at her, or Boba and BB-90, which can disable her E11 and force her to use her main blaster. At number 18 is Obi-Wan's Defensive Rush. Obi-Wan's Defensive Rush is excellent at closing distances between Obi-Wan and enemies without letting Obi-Wan take any damage. It can also be used to let Obi-Wan make a quick getaway while blocking shots, making this both a defensive and offensive ability at the same time. This ability is decent in hero combat, however if the enemies haven't had their abilities restricted, they can easily counter you with their abilities while you use your defensive rush. At number 17 is Luke's Push. This is a great crowd control ability and lets you easily destroy groups of enemies. This ability is also able to kill all non-heavy infantry by itself, making it a great offensive ability and allowing you to score very high kill streaks in trooper modes. This ability is also a very good counter to enemy heroes and can be used to punish aggressive enemies in hero combat, as well as knock annoying Bobas out of the sky and push annoying Phasmas away from their droids. Although this ability is great by itself, and even better when used in conjunction with Luke's other abilities, it doesn't compare to the remaining abilities, thus putting it at number 17. At number 16 is Darth Vader's Focused Rage. Although Vader already has the highest amount of health out of anyone in the game, this ability gives him 200 more health, as well as allowing him to deal 15 extra damage with his lightsaber attacks, and slow his stamina drain by 50%. With the Furious Resilience star card equipped, this ability also allows Vader to receive 25% damage reduction while this ability is active. Vader's already tanky enough, but this ability makes him even tankier and a downright menace to all enemies that cross his path. While this ability may not deal any physical damage to enemies, it deals a lot of psychological damage when enemies see him activate his Focused Rage. At number 15 is Leia's Thermal Detonators. Leia's Thermal Detonators have the ability to demolish entire enemy teams. With 3 thermal detonators in total, each one deals 250 damage, meaning that in total, her thermal detonators can deal up to 750 damage in one usage, which is enough to kill all enemy infantry and reinforcements, and the majority of enemy heroes. This is incredibly powerful. Leia's thermal detonators can be used to destroy entire waves of enemies and annihilate enemies crammed together in tight choke points and hallways. This ability is also extremely useful in hero game modes and is incredibly powerful overall. At number 14 is Han's Detonite Charge. This ability is a great crowd control ability and can be used to destroy enemies. It's also incredible in hero modes and is a great way to catch enemy heroes off guard. Although Han's Detonite Charge only deals 200 damage, which is significantly less than Leia's thermal detonators, it's ranked higher as it can be detonated on will, whereas Leia's thermal detonators take several seconds before they explode automatically. The ability to detonate Han's Detonite Charge manually allows him to catch enemies completely by surprise, while enemies have a few seconds to escape Leia's thermal detonators. This also allows Han to place his Detonite Charge on command posts or objectives, or at choke points, and blow it up when the time is right, and there's a large group of enemies gathered around it. Additionally, Han's Detonite Charge is also able to knock enemies to the ground, giving Han several seconds to attack them while they're defenseless. The versatility and usefulness of Han's Detonite Charge, as well as the ability to manually detonate it, puts it at number 14. At number 13 is Luke's Repulse. This ability is another great crowd control ability, and allows Luke to knock all enemies within a 360-degree radius around him to the ground. It also has a very large radius of 12 meters. This ability is great for using when surrounded by enemies, and can score you many kills if you use it in the right moments. At number 12 is Lando's Sharp Shot. This ability allows Lando to target and deal 200 damage to up to 5 enemies within 40 meters or 56 meters with a wide-eyed star card. This means that Lando is able to one-shot all infantry with this ability. This ability is insanely good on open maps and can score you incredible kill streaks as Lando. It's also very good at countering blaster heroes in hero combat and dealing with annoying bovers. Although this ability is really good, the bullets can be blocked by Saber heroes, and the lock on enemies is removed if they disappear behind cover, thus preventing this ability from making its way into the top 10. At number 11 is Kylo's Frenzy. This ability is very good for cleaning up groups of enemies, allowing Kylo to leap up to 10 meters to enemies and dealing 160 damage with each attack to enemy troopers, and 115 damage with each attack to enemy heroes, or 3 attacks in total. When used on a large group of enemies, Kylo's Frenzy can demolish them. Kylo's Frenzy works very well with his pull and freeze abilities, with his pull bringing all the enemies together for him to use his Frenzy on, and his freeze preventing enemies from escaping while he frenzies them. This ability is also very good in hero game modes. If all 3 frenzy attacks hit, Kylo can deal 345 damage to enemy heroes. This ability is very versatile and great at eliminating large groups of enemies. Alright, now we're in the top 10. At number 10 is Chewbacca's Charge Slam. This ability is very good at getting rid of large crowds and clearing entire objectives. When used in tight spaces or areas where enemies are bundled close together, Chewbacca can clear out the entire area easily, making it one of the best crowd control abilities in the game. This ability is also good for running away from deadly situations and knocking enemy heroes to the ground in hero game modes. With this ability, Chewbacca is a strong hero in both Trooper and hero game modes. At number 9 is Finn's Big Deal. Finn's Big Deal, although it doesn't get any kills, makes a huge difference not only to Finn, but also to any nearby allies. Finn's Big Deal allows himself and allies within 15 meters to fire their weapons without overheating, have their abilities recharge 20% faster, grants 15 to 45% damage reduction to Finn's allies and 25 to 55% damage reduction to himself, depending on how many allies are affected, and grants 130 extra health to nearby allies, and 120 to 150 extra health to Finn, also depending on how many allies are affected. These boosts are all insane, and the fact that they not only help Finn, but also his allies makes it 10 times better. With this ability, Finn can single-handedly influence the results of a fight, giving himself and his allies the boost they need to win. Despite not being a damage ability, this ability allows Finn and his allies to deal much more damage and get many more kills, and is very powerful. At number 8 is Bossk's Predator Instincts. Bossk's Predator Instincts is one of the best abilities in the game, allowing him to fire grenades dealing 80 damage every 0.7 seconds. This ability is OP in Trooper modes, and when combined with the Ultimate Predator star card, which regenerates 7.5 seconds of the ability's duration for each kill Bossk gets, you can pretty much continue using this ability forever until there are no more enemies. This ability also allows Bossk to go head to head with enemy heroes, and can give enemy heroes a really tough time. Although Bossk struggles with enemy heroes when versing them himself, his Predator instincts give him a much better chance at dealing with them, and are arguably the strongest weapon he has against them. Despite this ability's strengths, there are still better options, however. At number 7 is General Grievous's Claw Rush. This lets Grievous dominate Trooper game modes, allowing him to deal 130 damage with each hit. However, with the lineup Weaklings star card, General Grievous can deal 180 damage with each hit, allowing him to one-shot all infantry except heavies with his Claw Rush. This ability allows Grievous to be a menace, letting him crawl into squads of enemies and wipe them all out before crawling out of there. Grievous's Claw Rush can also be used as a quick way of escaping dangerous situations and recovering. Additionally, it's also very useful in hero modes, allowing Grievous to knock over enemy heroes and get the advantage on them. Grievous's speed and the duration of this ability also allow him to make multiple attempts at hitting enemies, even if he misses the first try. This ability is a strong option and also provides Grievous with an option to attack if he runs out of stamina, which happens quite often. At number 6 is Dooku's Duelist. This ability is great in both Trooper and Hero modes, however it excels in Hero modes. At default, this increases Dooku's lightsaber attack damage by 25 and allows him to make 3 swings per second instead of 2. This allows him to one-shot all infantry except heavies, and with him able to swing 3 times per second, this means he can deal 465 damage per second at default, and 525 damage per second with the Masterful Duelist star card equipped. Even in Trooper modes, Duelist is still incredibly OP, and allows Dooku to one-shot almost all enemy troopers. Despite the incredible power of this ability, there are still, however, 5 abilities that top it. At number 5 is Chewbacca's Furious Bowcaster. This ability allows Chewbacca to shoot his bowcaster extremely quickly. With Furious Bowcaster, Chewbacca is able to deal between 250 to 325 damage per second, depending on where he hits the enemy, meaning that he can kill all infantry classes within a second with this ability. With the Echoing Roar star card equipped, the duration of Furious Bowcaster is increased by 10 seconds with each kill, meaning that this ability can essentially last forever until Chewbacca runs out of enemies to kill. This ability works great in both Trooper and Hero modes, allowing Chewbacca to dominate enemy troopers and melt enemy heroes. At number 4 is Palpatine's Chain Lightning. This ability is an insane crowd control ability, allowing Palpatine to clear entire areas with one ability usage. At default, this ability can hit up to 6 enemies, however with the Surge of Lightning star card, it's able to hit up to 10 enemies, allowing Palpatine to single-handedly empty entire rooms. This ability is also great for dealing a sudden surge of damage to enemy heroes in hero game modes, and can cause enemy heroes to run away in fear. The insane crowd controlling ability and damage potential of Chain Lightning puts it in 4th place. Alright, we're in the top 3 abilities now, the best of the best. In 3rd place is Darth Vader's Force Choke. Darth Vader's Choke is one of the deadliest crowd control abilities in the game, allowing Darth Vader to enter rooms, pick up all the enemies and crush them to death, with any survivors being able to be cut in half with his lightsaber throw. At default, Vader's Choke lasts for 1.5 seconds and deals a total of 130 damage. Vader's Force Choke is also just as deadly in hero modes. When you get choked by Darth Vader in hero combat, you know it's all over. Unfortunately though, Vader's Force Choke is still beaten out by 2 other abilities. In 2nd place is Finn's Deadeye. I struggled to decide between this ability and the ability in 1st place, but ultimately I decided that the other ability was better. It was a struggle though. Finn's Deadeye is insane, allowing you to lock onto any enemies within 30 meters and aimbot them with 0 skill required. With Deadeye, you can just hold down the shoot button and let the ability do the rest and rack up kills for you. With the Stay Calm star card, the duration of this ability also increases by 10 seconds for every kill you get, allowing you to continue just holding down the shoot button and keep farming kills until there are no more kills left to farm. This ability is also the perfect counter for annoying Bobas and Blaster heroes in hero combat modes, and can shred Saber heroes' stamina and health in seconds. Deadeye also allows you to get only headshots on BB-90, vaporizing his health in seconds. Deadeye is just an incredible ability that works immaculately in all game modes, and only has one ability that tops it. If you haven't figured it out yet, in first place, the best ability in the game, by far, is BB-8's Cable Spin. What do I even have to say? I can just show you the gameplay of this ability, and I don't even have to say anything else. This ability absolutely dominates every other ability in the game, outcompeting them all. Get surrounded by enemies? Just use Cable Spin. Want to take control of an objective or command post? Just use Cable Spin. Want to rack up a massive kill streak? Just use Cable Spin. Want to clear a hallway or control a choke point? Just use Cable Spin. Getting bullied by an enemy hero? Just use Cable Spin. No matter the situation, Cable Spin will always save the day and is without a doubt the best ability in the game. With that said, I'd like to thank you for watching this video, especially if you've all made it to the end. All of you who just skipped to this part, go back to the start and watch it properly. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you agree with my rankings, let me know in the comments. If you disagree with my rankings, just keep that to yourself or make your own video with your rankings. I know this was a bit of a longer video than my other ones, so if you did stick around to the end, then I would like to thank you very much. With that said, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.